If you've ever carried a secret long enough, you know the strangest part. It doesn't stay in one place. It doesn't live in a locked drawer in your mind, waiting to be opened on a bad day. It spreads. Quietly. Like a stain you keep pretending isn't there. It seeps into your choices, your tone, your relationships, your future. It becomes a second heartbeat. And eventually, you can't tell where you end and the secret begins. I didn't plan to live like that. At first, it was something I told myself I'd fix. Something temporary. A mistake I would correct as soon as the right moment arrived. I promised myself it wasn't who I was. Just something that happened. But the truth is, I didn't just carry the secret. I built a life around it. I arranged my decisions so I wouldn't have to look at it directly. I moved through the world with a carefulness that felt like maturity, but was really fear. And I didn't notice how much of my life it controlled until everything else felt chosen by something that wasn't me. People sometimes imagine secrets as dramatic things. Criminal things. Scandalous things. The kind of truth that makes other people gasp and look away. My secret wasn't cinematic. It was quiet. It was the kind of wrongness that doesn't scream, but changes the temperature in a room the moment you remember it exists. I learned early that some truths don't just hurt, they rearrange how people see you. And once someone sees you differently, you can't unsee yourself through their eyes. That fear shaped me. So I became careful. Controlled. Predictable. I made safe choices. I avoided risks that required visibility. I avoided situations where people might ask questions I couldn't answer without breaking the story I was living inside. I told myself I was private. What I really was cornered. The secret began small, a single moment I wanted to erase. A decision made under pressure. A moment of weakness dressed up as necessity. I won't romanticize it by calling it complicated. It was wrong. And I knew it. That knowledge didn't make me confess. It made me strategic. It made me quiet. It made me obsessed with appearances. I learned how to smile with the right amount of warmth. How to appear present without revealing too much. How to be liked without being known. It worked. That's the cruel part. It worked so well that my life started to look respectable. Stable. Even admirable. People praised my discipline. My restraint. My ability to stay calm under pressure. They didn't know calm was the only option when panic would expose you. I became the person who never overreacted, because overreaction invited scrutiny. I became the person who never had messy emotions, because messiness leads to questions. I became the person who always had a plan, because improvisation is dangerous when you're hiding something. And for a while, it felt like success. But success built on hiding has a particular texture. It looks solid from the outside, but it feels brittle from the inside. Every good moment is shadowed by the awareness that it could be taken away. Every compliment feels slightly misplaced. Every relationship feels conditional. Not because others make it conditional, because you do. You're the one who knows. I noticed the first real crack in my life in a place that should have been harmless. Someone asked me, casually, "Are you happy?" It was the kind of question people ask without expecting a real answer. The kind of question you respond to with a laugh and a shrug and something light. But I froze. Not outwardly. I smiled. I did what I always did. I gave the safe response. I said something neutral. Something that didn't invite more questions. And then, later, alone, I realized I couldn't answer honestly even in my own head. Because happiness requires presence. And I wasn't present in my life. I was managing it. Monitoring it. Maintaining it like a fragile structure that might collapse if I looked away. The secret was always there, not in my thoughts all the time, but in my posture. In my decisions. In the quiet way I avoided being fully seen. It had turned me into someone cautious in places where I used to be brave. And the longer I carried it, the more it changed what I believed I deserved. I started accepting less. Less intimacy. Less risk. Less joy. Because joy felt unsafe. Joy makes you careless. Joy makes you trust the world. And trust is dangerous when you're hiding a fracture beneath the surface. So I kept my life slightly dim. I didn't chase big dreams, because big dreams attract attention. I didn't try to become extraordinary, because extraordinary people get examined. I didn't allow myself to be fully loved, because love invites closeness, and closeness invites the question I feared most: tell me everything. I became someone who could be admired at a distance and tolerated up close, but never truly known. That was the tragedy I didn't recognize until it was already established. The secret didn't just make me anxious. It made me small. Not outwardly. Outwardly, I looked fine. Productive. Responsible. Calm. But internally, my world narrowed. My choices weren't guided by desire, they were guided by avoidance. Avoid this conversation. Avoid that risk. Avoid that closeness. Avoid that version of myself who might feel safe enough to confess. The strange thing is, I didn't even think of it as a secret anymore. It became normal. Background. Like a low hum you stop hearing because it's always been there. Until one night, for reasons I still can't fully explain, it got louder. Nothing happened that night. No crisis. No dramatic trigger. Just a quiet moment when the world was still and I couldn't distract myself anymore. I sat alone, and the thought arrived with terrifying clarity: I'm not living my life. I'm living around my secret. And suddenly, everything made sense: the exhaustion, the distance, the emptiness that no accomplishment could fill. Because my life wasn't built on values or desire. It was built on containment. I had been making decisions for years as if my future was a courtroom and I was preparing a defense. And in that moment, I realized the worst part: the secret wasn't just a thing that happened to me. It was the thing I was choosing, every day, by refusing to confront it. That realization didn't feel like guilt. It felt like grief. Grief for the person I might have been if I had faced the truth early, when it still had the power to change the shape of my life instead of silently directing it. I didn't know yet what I would do. I only knew something essential had shifted. Because now the secret wasn't merely something I carried. It was something I had to answer for. Once I admitted to myself that the secret was making my decisions, I thought the solution would be obvious. Confess. Fix it. Move on. That's how people talk about secrets, as if they are single knots you untie once and then discard. But the truth was more uncomfortable. The secret wasn't just something I could reveal. It had become a system. It shaped where I went, who I trusted, what I avoided, and how much of myself I allowed into the world. It was woven into my habits so deeply that removing it felt like removing load-bearing walls. I realized that if I told the truth, I wouldn't just lose the secret. I would lose the life built around it. That fear kept me suspended. Days passed where I felt hyper-aware of my own behavior. I watched myself choose safety again and again, declining opportunities, redirecting conversations, staying quiet when honesty would have complicated things. I started seeing how often I told myself, not yet. Not yet is the favorite language of fear. Not yet to intimacy. Not yet to risk. Not yet to truth. And every not yet reinforced the same message: survival mattered more than authenticity. The strange part was that nothing felt urgent from the outside. My life wasn't collapsing. I wasn't miserable in a way that demanded intervention. Everything functioned. That made the internal pressure harder to justify. I asked myself, if nothing is wrong, why do I feel trapped? The answer was uncomfortable. Because nothing was wrong externally, everything was wrong internally. I had shaped my identity around being unexposed. I was the one who didn't complicate things, didn't bring heavy truths into the room, didn't disrupt stability. People felt safe around me. I wasn't safe with myself. The secret had trained me to prioritize containment over connection. I didn't just hide the truth, I hid my reactions, my doubts, my intensity. Anything that might hint at depth felt risky. Over time, I began to notice how emotionally shallow my life had become. Not empty, controlled. I had conversations, but they skimmed the surface. I had relationships, but they lacked vulnerability. I had goals, but they were carefully selected to avoid scrutiny. I wasn't lonely in the traditional sense. I was surrounded by people. I was unseen. That realization hurt more than the secret itself. I started imagining two futures. In one, I continued like this, measured, careful, respectable. I would age into this version of myself gracefully. No scandals. No disasters. Just a life that made sense to others and felt increasingly foreign to me. In the other future, I told the truth. And everything became uncertain. I didn't know which future scared me more. Because the second future wasn't heroic. It didn't guarantee redemption. Telling the truth wouldn't magically restore lost years or rebuild trust automatically. It would simply expose reality. And exposure has consequences. I wrestled with questions that had no clean answers. Do you tell the truth even when it hurts people who didn't ask for it? Do you disrupt stability for the sake of integrity? Do you risk becoming the villain in someone else's story just to stop living a lie? Those questions haunted me at night. I wasn't afraid of being judged. I was afraid of being reduced. Afraid that the truth would flatten me into one moment, one mistake, one label, erasing everything else I was. That fear kept me silent longer than I want to admit. But silence has a cost that accumulates quietly. I began to feel resentment, not toward others, but toward my own life. Toward the careful version of myself I had become. Toward the fact that I was living a life optimized for damage control instead of meaning. That resentment leaked out in subtle ways. Irritability. Detachment. Fatigue. A constant low-level tension, as if I were always bracing for impact that never came. The secret had stopped being a shield. It had become a cage. I realized that I wasn't just hiding the truth from others. I was hiding from myself. Every time I avoided a conversation, I reinforced the belief that I couldn't handle the consequences. Every time I chose safety over honesty, I told myself that my real self was too dangerous to exist openly. That belief erodes you. It teaches you to distrust your own capacity for repair. One night, lying awake, I asked myself a question I could no longer escape: if I continue like this, who am I becoming? The answer came quickly, and it terrified me. I was becoming someone whose entire life was shaped by fear of exposure. Someone whose choices were dictated by a past moment instead of present values. Someone who had surrendered authorship to a secret that no longer even shocked me. That was the breaking point. Not guilt. Not shame. Clarity. I understood then that the secret had already taken enough. It had taken my spontaneity, my courage, my intimacy, my sense of deserving a full life. Keeping it any longer wouldn't protect me. It would finish erasing me. I didn't yet know how I would confront it. I didn't know who I would tell, or what would happen afterward. I didn't even know if telling the truth would make anything better. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Living around the secret was no longer survivable. And whatever came next, exposure, loss, uncertainty, would at least be chosen. I wish I could tell you that when I finally faced the secret, everything became clear. It didn't. What became clear was something far less comforting. There was no perfect moment to tell the truth. No version of events where everyone understood, forgave, and moved on cleanly. There was only a moment when continuing to hide felt more dangerous than whatever honesty might destroy. That was the moment I chose. Not bravely. Not confidently. Simply deliberately. I didn't confess in a dramatic way. I didn't gather everyone involved or prepare a speech that explained everything perfectly. I spoke to one person first, not because they were the most important, but because they were the first person I stopped hiding from. My voice shook. My words were uneven. I didn't try to justify myself or soften what had happened. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I just told the truth. And then I waited. The silence that followed was different from the silence I had lived with for years. That silence wasn't hiding anything. It was absorbing something. The reaction wasn't what I had imagined. There was pain. Confusion. A kind of sadness that felt heavier than anger would have. I saw disappointment in their eyes, not exaggerated, not theatrical, just real. That hurt more than judgment ever could have. Because disappointment means someone expected more of you. I didn't walk away from that conversation feeling redeemed. I walked away feeling exposed, fragile, and strangely lighter. The secret was no longer working in the background of every thought. It had shape now. Edges. Consequences. The days that followed were disorienting. Some things broke. Some relationships shifted. Some assumptions collapsed quietly. I lost certain versions of myself, the reliable one, the untouchable one, the person who always seemed in control. I had to sit with the fact that honesty doesn't erase damage. It only stops it from spreading invisibly. There were moments when I regretted speaking. Moments when I missed the false safety of silence. When living openly felt harder than living carefully ever had. But something fundamental had changed. I no longer woke up managing a hidden threat. My choices began to come from the present instead of the past. I stopped asking, will this expose me? And started asking, is this aligned with who I want to be now? That shift was subtle, but it altered everything. I learned that secrets don't just hide information, they teach you to live defensively. They turn your life into a perimeter instead of a place. They convince you that your real self is a liability instead of a source. Letting go of the secret didn't make me innocent. It made me accountable. And accountability, while uncomfortable, gave me something I hadn't had in years. Agency. I stopped organizing my future around damage control. I allowed myself to want things again, not cautiously, not conditionally, but honestly. I took small risks without rehearsing every outcome. I let people see uncertainty instead of perfection. Some of them stayed. Some didn't. That loss hurt, but it was clean pain, not the slow corrosion of hiding. I don't tell this story to suggest that confession fixes everything. It doesn't. Some consequences are permanent. Some trust doesn't return. Some versions of your life remain closed once the truth comes out. I live with that. But I also live without the constant calculation. Without the background fear. Without the sense that my life is being negotiated by something I refuse to face. If you're listening to this and carrying a secret, not a dramatic one, not a cinematic one, just a truth you've built your life around avoiding, I want you to understand this: the secret already has power. Silence doesn't contain it. It distributes it. It spreads into your decisions, your limits, your sense of what you deserve. It teaches you to accept a smaller life in exchange for safety. I let a secret make every decision for me. And for a long time, I called that caution. Maturity. Survival. It wasn't. It was disappearance. Facing it didn't restore what I lost while hiding. It didn't rewind time or erase consequences. But it gave me back the one thing the secret had taken completely. My authorship. My life is quieter now in some ways, messier in others. It's less polished. Less protected. Less predictable. But it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, the future isn't something I manage around a fear. It's something I step into, without a second heartbeat in my chest, without a truth waiting to surface. That freedom didn't come from forgiveness. It came from refusal. Refusal to keep living as if my past mistake deserved to write my future. And that, finally, is how I began again.